God bless. Welcome to another episode of Pastor Mike, Dynamic Voices for a Diverse Church, powered by The Witness, a Black Christian collective. I'm your host, G. Tyler Burns. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at G. Tyler Burns. Please follow at your own risk. And joining me, as always, is the founder of The Witness. He has a very extensive bio. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the 6-time best-selling author, Mr. Blue Check Verified himself. You can follow his writings at JemarTisby.substack.com. Dr. Jemar Tisby, what's going on, brother?
GTB, good to be back in the studio with you. Or are we on GT terms?
Of course, bro. Absolutely.
GT? Is that okay?
If we not, that's a problem, bro. If we not, that's a problem, bro. I'll tell you right now. Like I'm in this Stephen A. Smith kick right now.
Here we
so
are. All right. Yes.
Did you hear? And I think the people need to be aware of this. Did you hear that in polling right now for the Democratic national candidate for 4 years from now?
Don't say it. No.
Stephen A. Smith is getting 3% in the straw poll.
Lord.
I just need people to know that. As far as I understand, as far as I've heard, that's actually ahead of Tim Kaine.
Wow.
I just need people to know.
See, this is how I know this nation is unserious. We would rather have an entertainer and a talker than a leader. But hey.
I could see. Well, I mean, it is. I mean, it do be facts. Like we do prefer it, you know. So it's very interesting. Side note, we were having this conversation before, and it made me think of this statement we say at our church. So some of y'all know because you've been following, you've been watching, you've been listening intently to the podcast, and some of you have even reached out and asked me, how's that going? It is true. We have a multi-ethnic church now at the church where I pastor. Nice. Yes, we had an influx of white Christians come in due to a church.
They know you're black, right?
There have been rumors. There have been rumors.
I don't know. They wandered in by accident.
And sometimes, so now it's a scenario where it's not just people from that church, it's anybody will come in, and now they're like, oh, snap. It's a multi-ethnic church. Cool. Like, so they're, do their Googles and then show up or people invite or what have you. And so I get some looks sometimes when people come in. Like,
we thought G. Tyler was
different. typically the worship will tell them, because it's a very black-centered church in expression, rooted in the expansive black Christian tradition. But there's some times where, people may not know. And especially the older people who come in, they're kind of like, oh, snap,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just pleasant. That was so good, I love y'all, but you know how they be saying, ooh, that was just,
For a Negro.
Yeah, that was just good. I had a lady come up to me recently, actually, and it was so funny. And I told her, I was like, that's very interesting for a pastor to hear. She came and said, did you listen to so-and-so famous white church pastor this morning? I was like, no, I don't typically listen to him. It's like, you remind me so much of him. I was like, I don't know if that's a compliment. Like, I hope that's a compliment. Especially like right after I preach,
right.
Like A, and me to like Stephen Furtick or something like that. I was like, okay, interesting. I mean, hey, cool. But we got this influx of people. I made this statement. I actually preached a whole sermon about it. And it was a statement of culture. And I wanted to let people know the culture of Rise City Church. So the statement had this title, and the sermon had this title. At Rise City Church, we don't do cheap unity.
Ooh.
And so I was trying to let them know.
That's a bar.
We don't do cheap unity. I know it seems like it's very easy to beat your chest, puff your chest out at the level of diversity. So you hear a lot of people typically say, okay, yeah, we got a church like heaven and all this. And number one, no, typically not. You cannot fathom heaven's diversity more than likely.
You got like 3 families of color or something.
Right.
Like,
that's
we
not
there.
It's not a church like heaven. I know you think it is. But it also sets up this really unhealthy idea that unity is just something that we manufacture, that through the right aesthetics, through the right strategy, through the right kind of pulling the puppet strings and the levers of diversity, just kind of add water and stir. And now all of a sudden we have unity.
That's
because
the formula.
And also because the presence of diverse people, even in the same room, even if it is reaching the multi-ethnic scale, even if it is reaching the diverse scale, that our presence here means that we are unified in its true biblical sense. Not just that we're worshiping together, but that we're unified. And it's funny, we see this even in the Christian justice space. As we're pushing for justice, there's some people who say that they're pushing for justice, but their actions don't really match what they say that they're pushing for. So have you ever seen this? Have you seen this? It seems as though there's a little incongruence between what's said and what's done.
It feels like I see this with Black Christians, and it vexes me. It vexes me because we have the lived experience to really go there about truth, about justice, about changing, and about disrupting, right? But I think we as Christians sometimes misunderstand the principles of unity and peacemaking. And it's like MLK said, that true peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. Right?
Now, hang on.
Or true justice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Hang on, because they might have missed it. Now, you said you're vexed because you see this with Black Christians.
Right.
Now, this is a little different. Now, I know some of y'all are thinking we just talking about white Christians and that's the direction. Hang on now. You saying you see this with Black Christians?
Yeah. Am I tripping? Have you seen it?
No, I've definitely seen it.
Because the onus and the burden is often on Black people to be the bridge builder, to be the unifier, as the offended party, which legitimately we are when it comes to racism, white supremacy, all of those things. And so us extending the olive branch is like this really big deal, right? Because it means Christ lives in us. We're forgiving. We're turning the other cheek. We're saying that the unity of the body can overcome the harms that we've experienced, right? But is there a sense in which some, and I would even say some prominent Black folks in ministries, kind of miss the mark when it comes to truly speaking the truth in love and saying, no, justice demands accountability?
You know what's interesting, Jemar? I don't think we've ever talked on the podcast about the feeling that you get as a Black person, or specifically a Black Christian, when a white person or a white Christian comes up to you and apologizes or repents for what has happened. And specifically, I don't mean the awkward feeling. So somebody brought this to me. This is the awkward side, right? So somebody brought this to me. I had actually forgotten all about it. He said, man, you remember when we were at that retreat? I ran into him at that event. He's like, man, you remember when we were at that retreat? And there was a group of us. He's like, yo, man, we were at this retreat and we were all sitting around. It was a whole bunch of guys. And then all of a sudden, this dude turns and looks at Tyler in front of everybody. He's like, man, I'm so sorry for what we did to y'all. And he said, it was so funny to me because you were just like, you didn't even say anything. I was like, yo, I did not remember that. I did not even remember. And then I was like, yeah, that really happened. Now that's the awkward side of things, right? You don't need
where
to perform
he just like
penance.
Repents of all white supremacy for
to
everybody.
me. And there were other Black people in the room, so it's just like, does it only apply to me? Am I the representative in this moment? Does power shift to me?
Apologize to you, but not to the Black guy to your left.
Like, what's going on? So that was weird. That's the awkward part. But you know what, Jemar? We don't talk a lot about this phenomenon in the heart of Black Christians. Whenever a white Christian comes up and talks or vents or shares about their epiphany, their repentant heart, their brokenness over racism. We haven't talked about this. Sometimes you feel a little powerful.
Wow.
Sometimes you feel like the power has shifted. And sometimes you feel like, maybe I could pardon them.
Whoa.
I know we haven't talked
Only
about
Jesus
this.
has the power to pardon.
We haven't talked about this before because sometimes it makes you feel important and powerful that they would come to you. Now, I know once you really dig down into your heart, it's been a long time since I felt that. But I found out there are a lot of Black Christians that actually, they take it easy on people because it makes them feel a sense of pride and virtue.
Some magnanimous. So you're saying the dynamic is a white person sees you as the representative of all Black people, has this epiphany, wants to repent of their
crying, tearful.
And in that moment, because they're essentially coming to you for absolution and pardon and forgiveness, you sort of embrace that or absorb it or take on that mantle, and you decide out of your own magnanimity and, nobility, exactly. I will grant you pardon, no hard feelings.
Yes. You know what? It's okay.
Wow. Wow.
It's okay.
That's interesting.
It's all right. You know what? We're all on a journey. You know what?
Don't say that, because I said that. I've said that.
You know what? I don't hold it against you.
I don't hold it against you.
Not out of the purity of my heart. I don't hold it against you because now I got the power. Now I got the power to determine how this goes.
Interesting.
Now I got the power to determine how this. I'm telling you, I've seen it, not just in my own life, but I've seen it. People are like, you know what? And in that moment, something interesting is happening. Because in that moment, we are taking the place of God. And oftentimes, I very rarely told people, or very rarely seen white Christians be told, yeah, you need to sit in that for a little bit. Go ahead, sit in that. You need to wrestle with that. Maybe you need to take that to the Lord and repent.
So I don't think the sin is in the response. The sin is in the motivation.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So
yes.
It can definitely be where, first of all, white people just ponder for a moment why you feel the need to go up to a specific black person and apologize for your racism.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, and there's something there, right? There's something there you need to examine. We don't need to be put in that position, is what I'm saying.
Please. That's a very awkward
I
position.
think a better approach is, you know, talks like what you gave, sermons like what you gave have opened my eyes to the ways that I've benefited from racism. And I just want you to know that your being faithful to your call is helping me. I appreciate that.
Boom.
You know,
that's it.
And that's cool. And then guess what? You don't put us in a position to offer absolution
or to catch emotional vomit. Like now we gotta catch your emotional puke. And I'm like, bro, I'm not. Whoa, like I'm not your therapist. I'm not even your pastor right now. Like this is what's it's very interesting to me. I don't experience a lot of this as a pastor, where people would just come up to me and like just emotionally puke about racism. I don't do that. But if they did, it would be different because I'd be like, okay, well, we need to walk through this because I'm your pastor. Like this is different. But I'm just some random guy that you saw speak or teach. I mean, and so the reason I say this is important is it sometimes puts us in this position where rather than receiving gratitude for the work that we're doing, and rather than people acknowledging our effort, sometimes it can get us in this weird position where we feel like we have to make it all right in the moment. And then the reason I'm bringing this up is it's a gateway to cheap unity. And it makes people not go deeper in the work. And it puts us in this awkward position of saying like, it's okay, it's all right, yeah, well, I understand.
Because you offer this sort of rapid absolution, and then it's all said and done. I can wipe my hands of it. We're good now, without doing the deeper work.
Now, this is a very past the mic conversation.
This is very niche. Yes.
This is a very past the mic conversation. But it applies sometimes in the way in which we take our broader role as representatives of justice in spaces where injustice is present. And we give up too easily, or we accept too little, or we allow ourselves to not sit in that tension or that awkward moment because we're trying to get through to the point. And a lot of here's the thing, this is not just for black Christians, regular everyday black Christians, for those of us with platforms. We know people have paid us money. We know people have paid us money for our services and our work, paid us money for us speaking, paid us money for our consultation. And now we're like, okay, all right. Well, let me just tie it up with the bow. That's not our responsibility. And sometimes we feel like it is.
It's almost like having a spotter in the gym, right? And as soon as the person's arm starts shaking and it gets heavy, we're like, we got it. We'll lift that burden off of you. Actually, you got to struggle through it. We're here to support. We're not going to let you break your neck on this, right? But at the same time, it's in the arm shaking, trembling, feel weak. I don't know if I can hold this up that you get stronger.
That's where the
But we
growth
actually
is.
steal their ability to grow when we take that weight off of them too soon. Oof.
That's the perfect analogy. That's perfect
wild.
analogy.
That's
Now,
wild.
Again, this is a very past the mic.
Very past the mic.
Very past
You
the
know
mic
what you signed up for.
But at the same time, I feel like it's that little nudge for us as black Christians to say, well, how are we showing up in these spaces? And how are we showing up as those who claim to represent justice? Are we peacemakers, peacekeepers? Like, do we really actually stand for what we say we stand for?
I think we actually have to have higher standards. I think this is part of what it boils down to. We think that just being in the room, giving the speech, having the ear, or even having the person walk up and, repent, whatever they're doing. We think that's the thing. That's the beginning. That's not the end. And we almost give up too easily, and we say, this is it. This is unity. This is the presence of justice, right? And reality is we need to, the easy thing to do in that situation is to say, I forgive you.
Yes.
And it's not that you hold a grudge. I'm not saying don't forgive.
It's not that you don't forgive.
Right?
Yeah.
But the easy thing to do is to take the burden off and say, we're past that. Now let's live like we're unified now. But I think we saw the consequences of that in, let's say, for example, the 2016 election, where we thought, at least I was in circles where I thought we were unified because we had that sort of cheap unit. But when the rubber hit the road about policies, about stances, about ideologies that adversely affected me as a black person, and you didn't get it, and you were proud in your ignorance, then I realized, oh, we had a cheap unity.
And then I was upset with you.
Yeah.
Because we had all these breakfasts and these coffees.
We prayed together. We sang together. I was over at your house. We did the Bible study.
Like, and now you telling me this is what it. Okay, so you bringing up examples. So let's take a break. And then when we come back, we need to get into the details. Like, we need to give examples of what cheap unity looks like in this Christian justice work. We'll be right back. Well, greetings and God bless, family. This is your host of Pastor Mike, Tyler Burns, and I am so excited that we're still doing Pastor Mike 11 years after we started. Think about this. 11 years after we started, we're still doing this. And the reason why we can do it is because people like you have supported us from the beginning. We would not still be here if not for the support of people who are our patrons. And if you go to patreon.com/Pastor Mike, if this podcast has helped you in any way, shape, or form, if we've encouraged you to think more deeply about race and justice, if we've inspired you to make change right where you are, if we've been an oasis in the desert in the midst of toxic church spaces, we need your help. We need your support. For just a few dollars every single month, you can keep us going. You literally, as our listeners, keep us going. So head to patreon.com/Pastor Mike. We're passing the mic to you for your support so that we can continue doing this podcast that so many people love. Thank you so much for your support. If you are already a patron, and if you're not, just a few dollars a month. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're talking about cheap unity, and we're talking about examples of what this looks like. So you referenced 2016, and I think that's so helpful. I think also now we could reference, and I know you were going there probably, 2020 as well. So I think this is an example of what cheap unity looks like sometimes, which is you buy the books and people patronize your books. People, listen to you, support you, those types of things. And that's cool. But like, that doesn't actually in and of itself mean that we're unified.
Yeah.
The presence of questions or the presence of listening or the presence of reading doesn't actually mean you understand.
Exactly. And so I'm focusing here on Black Christians.
Exactly.
Like, what are we doing?
Exactly.
What are we conveying when we ostensibly say, when you do those things, which are good and right and necessary, buy the books, follow us on social media, listen to our sermons or our talks, right? But then we actually don't hold you accountable, if that's a way to put it. If we don't actually say, now this is an entrance for the difficult conversations and actions that need to take place for true equity and justice to come about. And here's the temptation.
Yeah. Say the temptation, because I think this is important.
Is we don't want to sacrifice the platform that we get from appearing to be unifiers, right? What happens is you come so far, and white people sort of gather around your voice, right? And as long as it's the, hey, here's the truth about racism in general terms, here's why we need to come together, and it's white people responding, yes, amen, that message gets traction. when you take it steps beyond that and say, now you have to understand the ways you've benefited from whiteness, the ways you still continue to benefit from it, the way that you need to come to these spaces and they need to remain Black-centered and not cater to your sensibility. Those parts, then you can be labeled divisive. And you know what that does? It cuts into your platform. Sure. It cuts into your paycheck. It also cuts into your pride. Because it feels really good. It feels really good to be that magical Negro who brings people together, who talks about race, but does it in such a way that I can gather. See, I'm not like those other Black people that are like too militant and angry. Okay. See? Oh,
so this is an example that I was going to touch on with cheap unity, is when you start to explain or clarify yourself from other types of Black people in the presence of white people. Wow. Like, this is an example of you being addicted to cheap unity as a Black Christian. When you start to literally look at, in a white audience or in a white setting or in a white boardroom or in a white dinner, you say, well, you know, they're doing it their way. And, you know, love them. But I wouldn't, they're a little militant. You know, they're a little radical.
They put their Blackness above their Christianity. You heard that one?
Of course. Well, you know, I actually put my Christianity first.
Of course.
And all right, they're doing their thing.
You're one of the good ones.
Exactly. Well, that's what you're announcing, that you're one of the good ones. You're announcing, and this is key, cheap unity. You feel the need to announce you are safe.
Ooh, that's it. That's good.
I'm safe.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about me.
Yeah.
You put me on a platform, I'm not going to say anything wild. I'm going to support all your stuff. I'm not going to challenge you publicly. Why would I challenge you publicly? I know you. I'll just pull you to the side and maybe say, you could have said it a little bit better. And in the way, what happens is you start to minimize harm. You start to minimize the consequences of what it means for someone on a platform to ignore the lived experiences of Black people who do not have access to that platform. And then you start to slowly compromise and negotiate. Start to negotiate your dignity. You start to negotiate the dignity of your people. You start to negotiate these stances. And you want to stay in the room and stay at the table. And if you stay at the table, how can I change anything if I'm not on the inside?
Oh, that's the line right there. There's layers.
I know I said like five there. I said like 5 different things.
There's layers there, but it's I think that part about being safe is really kind of central to what we're talking about. And what's insidious, if you will, about it is these are not people who avoid talking about race or justice altogether.
No.
We're not talking about Black Christians who just won't go there in the name of being safe and gathering a platform. We're talking about race and justice in such a way that it pits you against other Black people, and you are messaging to white people that you're not like those others. And therefore, come to my event, donate to my nonprofit, support my ministry, right? And I will never do to you what those other people seem to be doing. Yeah. I'm safe. Yeah. I'll never call you this. Yeah. I'll never demand that. That's what kind of irks me.
I think also maybe there's this sense as well that in a way, if you want true unity, that if you want biblical unity, what it truly means, true peace, not just peace where there is none. If you really actually want that, you have to establish a healthy distance of separation from the platforms of white Southern evangelical.
Watch it. They pay the most though, Tyler. They got the biggest paychecks.
So this is the odd part though, because you think unity is in your proximity. And sometimes unity is actually in your distance.
Oh, you better preach. Come on now.
Sometimes actually you not being there is a sign that the space isn't right. Yes. It's been very difficult. Yes. It's actually been very difficult for me to walk this out because I've had people who have actually challenged. They're like, hey, when you're on this platform, when you're at this conference, people will come to this conference because of you.
Because you're there.
And they'll come to this conference because they think it's safe, or they'll come to this conference because they think it's okay, or they'll come to this conference because they think it's going to be full-throated about race and justice. And I'm like, nah, it doesn't necessarily mean that, especially if it's this and that's that. And yes, like there are times and moments where you will be on bills that you're like, looking back on it, hindsight's 2020, probably wouldn't have done that. Actually, I probably shouldn't have been there.
Or you're making a deliberate statement.
Or you're like, hey, I'm going to disrupt, or I'm going to make a statement that is going to very clearly show a contrast between me and the rest of the people on that docket.
Sure.
But sometimes you're coding that it's safe. And sometimes actually to be unified, you need to look at them and say, no, I'm not going to do this on your network. No, I'm not going to do this at your conference. No, I won't speak. And here's why I'm not going to.
Yes.
Because you have not been clear with your audience about where you stand on race and justice in a time where you should be clear about where you stand on race and justice.
So this was one of the really painful personal experiences in my journey, is realizing that my presence at certain conferences, churches, denominations, higher ed institutions was signaling to other Black people, there's a place for me here. And what they didn't know was how fraught that place was. And I had to learn the hard way as a literal recruiter for some of these places, that I was, as MLK would say, I was integrating them into a burning house. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the epiphanies for me, for us as a podcast, as the witness, was realizing that how much power our presence could signal, how powerful our presence could be. And what we came to understand was that we did not want to signal to people that this was a safe place when it really wasn't. It wasn't ready for them. And so that's a word to Black Christians who are all about unity. Sometimes your presence in a place and your proximity to a place that isn't healthy or isn't ready is actually going to put others in harm's way.
I think it's also tough because, how do I say this? There's a sense in which sometimes people make it seem as though there are certain Christian causes, there are certain Christian movements, there are certain Christian conferences that are neutral. And they don't have to take a stand on race and justice.
Interesting.
So it's okay to stand in that platform. I think of really, really big conferences. Like, they're so big. And the theme is, it's revival. You know? Man, to use a name, right? I think a Passion Conference.
I was just thinking that. Yes.
I do. I think, and I've attended Passion years ago.
Yeah.
I attended Passion Conference as a young adult. I know people who work in that space.
So like a really long time ago,
When
you were young adult. That's young. Like way.
I didn't have facial hair. That's how
like
long ago
decades.
it was.
Wow.
I didn't have facial hair.
So the beef
wow,
times.
right? But I think of that like, man, do I think God could move in a space like that? Of course. Do I think God has moved in a space like that? Yeah, sure. Do I think God does move? Yeah, but it's kind of weird when you get that many people in the same room and you don't really say anything. It's kind of weird when you get a whole bunch of young adult pastors in the same room and young adults in the same room and nobody says anything about the lived experience of bodies. Like, nobody stands up and says, no, the way our country is going from a justice perspective, the way we just had a presidential election and a man was elected and is about to be inaugurated, and we need to pray that he has mercy, because right now he has not shown that he has any. I'm not saying you got to have a 10-point agenda of what we would say at the witness.
Yeah.
But it's kind of weird.
That's
and then you stand
really
on those
good
platforms
point.
and then it's kind of like, well, it's about the gospel. Okay, well, at a certain point, the implications of the gospel will tell you.
It's about justice, public justice.
How do you treat your neighbor? Just as what love looks like in public. Do you believe that or do you not? And then it feels like I've been in those spaces where I've been at youth conferences, young adult conferences on much smaller scales and felt like I won. Man, it was powerful.
Man, you just landed on the key to church growth. It's not just similar demographics, it's the content. And what a lot of Christian leaders and organizations have tapped into is, if I keep it individual, we can grow. If I talk about your personal piety and holiness, we can grow. If I talk about you, not lusting after people, if I talk about you giving your life to serve the Lord and going on trips, right?
But hold on. See, here's the thing, Jay, before you finish, this is the nature that some people are like, well, we do talk about justice because we talk about human trafficking.
Oh.
And we do talk about justice because we talk about abortion.
Okay.
And we do talk about justice because we talk about.
So what do you say to them?
But this is the thing. This is why I'm saying, like, it gets, we're talking about certain justice issues that are palatable to the masses, then rather than touch people. So people often talk about human trafficking because they cannot fathom themselves being complicit in any way, shape, or form in human trafficking.
Yeah.
So they're like, let me rally around this cause that would never be me. But when it comes to racism, it's like, oh snap, what is this? What you saying?
That is a little close to home.
Whoa, that's a little bit tough.
Yeah.
Well, hang on now. Now, I'm not a racist now. But it hits them close. So then they're like, man, well, you know what? I just might as well just stay away from all that because it's going to be political. It's going to be, you know what I'm saying? We just trying to keep the gospel the center. We just trying to keep Jesus at the center. And you have to ask yourself the question, why do you buy into a faith system that has nothing to say to the experience of discipling people out of and challenging them to repent for their racist ideology and attitudes that has been entrenched within the context of the white American church? Why do you have nothing to say about that? And are you telling me that at no point in time, Jesus has never impressed upon your heart through his spirit with a little bit of an unction, hey, you should say something about this? And you're on these huge, it's thousands of people. So I'm not saying that every time you stand up, okay, that's the relevant message. It's not like what I preach on every Sunday, right? Right. But when you have a captive audience, are you telling me that thousands upon thousands of young adults don't need to hear clarity on that?
Prophetic justice needs to speak to the idols of your own community. And when we speak prophetically about idols that aren't particularly tempting or prevalent in our own communities, who are we speaking to? Because it's not the people in front of us. It's out there. It's almost virtue signaling, right? It's almost virtue signaling. And I think that the lessons here are, we cannot be satisfied with cheap unity. That people coming to you, opening doors is only a beginning for the real conversations of the work that have to take place. And I think for Black Christians, and we've been through this as an organization, as a podcast, we've got to be willing to sacrifice the numbers and the dollars, absolutely, and all of that stuff. And
still going through it.
Big time.
And it's not, and I think the purpose of this is not to get to a place of ideological sameness or purity. Like, it's not necessarily to get to a point where I only work with people I fully agree with on a thousand different points. That's not what we're talking about. It's more like, I can't be in a space where I've committed myself to a work and the spaces I'm in haven't even brought it up, haven't even committed themselves. Like, what type of sense does that make? You know, where's my moral clarity? Where's my moral consistency? Where's my ethical commitment? And is it just because I just want there to be this semblance of unity, but it's not real?
We can't value the power of pardon more than the presence of justice. We can't value being perceived or put in this particular position as a racial justice leader, a racial reconciliation leader, more than actual reconciliation and actual justice. And I think there's that temptation there, that there's that position and that platform, and there's the real work that it requires. Yeah. And we can easily get those two mixed up. So I don't know. There's a lot to sit with and ponder.
That's
here,
a
man.
lot. There's a lot
There's
to
a
sit
lot.
with
There's
and
layers.
ponder.
You're
This is a
gonna have to
very
listen to this
yes.
2 to 3 times.
Very PTM conversation. What do y'all think? Like some of y'all are like, we about to get some. We got to get some mail. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's fair. We
Some
used to it. It's
commentary.
fine. Please comment. Let us know. Reach out to us. Let us know how you feeling. As always, you can subscribe wherever podcasts are heard, and also on YouTube as well, the Pastor Mike Podcast. You can also support the podcast for just a few dollars a month at patreon.com/passthemic, or you can go a little bit further if you so choose. Okay, you can support us there, and as we like to say on the podcast, we will see you soon on the next
Pass the Mic.
Mic.